They say every choice defines us. But what if you never really had a choice at all? My name is Venna Martinez. This is my story.
Her finger trembled on the trigger as Lorenzo stepped closer, his white shirt already blooming red where the first bullet had torn through his shoulder. The sirens were getting louder, screaming through the Dubai night like accusatory ghosts. His dark eyes never left hers, and there was no anger in them, only devastation. Only the kind of betrayal that shatters a man from the inside out. "You could have just left," he whispered, his voice cracking on the last word. Then he collapsed, and Venna's world collapsed with him. But this wasn't where their story began. This was where it ended, or so she thought. 3 months earlier, Madrid had been suffocating Venna Morales like a too-tight dress she couldn't unzip. At 23, she was drowning in architecture textbooks she could barely afford, working double shifts at Cafe Mercado and trying to forget Diego. Diego, with his charming smile and controlling hands. Diego, who told her what to wear, who to see, how to think. Diego, who she'd finally left 2 months ago after he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise when she'd mentioned wanting to study abroad. The bruise had faded. The feeling of being trapped hadn't. "You look like someone died," Lucia announced, sliding into the cafe booth with her usual dramatic flair. Venna's best friend since childhood had a way of reading her that was both comforting and terrifying. Lucia's dark curls bounced as she dropped a folder on the table between them. "So, I'm resurrecting you." Venna barely glanced up from wiping down the table. It was 11 p.m. and the cafe was finally empty except for the two of them. Her feet ached, her back ached, and her heart ached in that dull, persistent way that meant she was too tired to even properly feel her own sadness. "Lucia, I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Lucia pushed the folder closer. "Open it." Inside were printed tickets, hotel confirmations, and a glossy brochure showing Dubai's impossible skyline piercing a sunset sky. Venna's breath caught. "Lucia, what is this?" "Your graduation present. 2 weeks in Dubai. The trip leaves in 3 days." "I can't accept this. Do you know how much this costs?" Lucia's expression softened, and she reached across to squeeze Venna's flour-dusted hand. "I know you've been saving every euro for your mum's treatments. I know Diego made you feel small. I know you're working yourself to death trying to prove something to nobody but yourself. Venna, you need this. You need to remember that the world is bigger than this cafe, bigger than him, bigger than all the reasons you tell yourself you don't deserve beautiful things." Tears burned behind Venna's eyes. She hadn't cried in weeks. Crying felt like surrender, and she'd surrendered enough of herself to Diego. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll go. Say you'll dance and drink terrible cocktails, and maybe, remember what it feels like to just breathe." Lucia's voice cracked slightly. "Please, let me do this for you." So Venna said yes, not knowing that yes would lead to a penthouse prison, to falling in love with a dangerous man, to pointing a gun at his chest while her heart screamed at her to stop. Dubai hit her like stepping into a fever dream. The heat shimmered off endless glass and steel, money and ambition colliding in a city that seemed to have sprung from sand and sheer will. Venna spent the first 3 days in careful tourism, visiting the Burj Khalifa, wandering spice-scented souks, taking photos she'd probably never look at again. She was cautious, controlled, the way Diego had trained her to be without her even realizing it. On the fourth night, something inside her snapped. Maybe it was the third cocktail. Maybe it was the pulsing music in the club Lucia had insisted she visit before she flew back home. Maybe it was seeing a woman her age dancing with absolute abandon, her body moving like freedom looked. Whatever it was, Venna stopped thinking and started feeling. The club was called Vertigo, and it lived up to its name. Perched on the 45th floor of a hotel that probably cost more per night than Venna's monthly rent, it offered floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering sprawl. She danced alone at first, then with strangers, then alone again, her black dress clinging to skin that finally felt like hers. For the first time in months, she wasn't Diego's ex-girlfriend, or her mother's worried daughter, or the scholarship student barely hanging on. She was just Venna, alive, electric, free. She didn't notice the three men watching her from the bar, didn't notice when they started moving closer, circling like sharks who'd scented blood in the water. She was too lost in the music, in the feeling of her body moving without permission or apology. "Hey, beautiful, you look lost." The voice came from behind her, too close, breath hot on her neck. Venna turned to find a man with cold eyes and an expensive suit invading her space. Two others flanked him, blocking her path to the main floor. "I'm fine, thanks," Venna said, trying to step around them, but the first man caught her wrist. Not like Diego used to, quick and angry. This was worse. This was calculating. "Don't be rude. We just want to talk. Maybe buy you a drink." His accent was thick, Russian maybe, and his grip tightened when she tried to pull away. "You're friends with the Santos family, yes?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Fear sobered her faster than any amount of water could. "Let go of me." She said, "Let go." The voice cut through the music like a knife through silk, cold and absolute. The three men turned, and Venna looked past them to see him for the first time. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that cost more than she could fathom. His face was all sharp angles and controlled violence, handsome in the way that dangerous things often are. Dark hair, darker eyes, and an expression that promised consequences. The man holding Venna's wrist loosened his grip slightly. "This doesn't concern you, Santos." So they knew each other. Venna's fear doubled. What had she stumbled into? "Everything in my city concerns me, Dimitri." The dangerous man took a step closer, and Venna noticed the two large men flanking him, hands inside their jackets. Especially when trash from Moscow comes here, thinking they can touch what isn't theirs. "The girl's nobody. We were just talking." "The girl is leaving. With me." His eyes finally met Venna's, and she saw something flicker in them. Not kindness exactly, but something close to it. "Unless you want to stay here with these gentlemen?" Venna shook her head frantically. The man holding her released her wrist, and she stumbled forward. The dangerous man caught her elbow, steadying her with surprising gentleness. His hand was warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "Walk with me," he murmured. "Don't look back. Don't run." She obeyed, her legs unsteady from adrenaline and alcohol. Behind them, she heard Dimitri say something sharp in Russian, and she heard the dangerous man respond in the same language, his tone glacial. Then they were moving through the crowd, his hand still on her elbow, guiding her toward a private exit she hadn't noticed before. "I have a car waiting," he said, as they stepped into a hallway that was suddenly shockingly quiet. The music faded to a muffled pulse. I'll take you to your hotel. Where are you staying? The Ritz-Carlton. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, small and frightened. But I can get a taxi. I don't need... Those men will be waiting for any taxi you take. He was leading her toward an elevator, one that required a key card he produced from his pocket. They thought you were connected to my family. That makes you a target until they're convinced otherwise. The elevator doors opened, revealing mirrored walls and soft lighting. Venna stepped inside, her reflection showing her exactly how out of her depth she was. Smudged makeup, wild hair, a girl playing dress-up in a world that could eat her alive. The dangerous man stepped in beside her, and she realized how much space he took up, how the air seemed to change around him. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Lorenzo Santos." He pressed the button for the ground floor. "And you?" Venna Martinez." "Spanish?" he asked. "From Madrid. I'm just visiting. I leave in 10 days. Something crossed his face, there and gone too quickly to read. "Madrid. My mother was from Seville." The elevator descended in silence. Venna's head was spinning, and not just from the alcohol. She kept replaying the moment when Lorenzo had stepped between her and those men, the casual way he'd wielded power like other people wielded words. This was a man used to being obeyed, used to danger, used to winning. "Thank you," she said finally, "for helping me." "Don't thank me yet." The elevator doors opened onto an underground parking garage, all concrete and shadows. A black Mercedes waited, engine running, another large man behind the wheel. "You may not like where this night ends." That should have scared her more than it did. Later, she'd wonder if some part of her had already been caught, already been falling from that very first moment. But right then, climbing into the back of his car while he slid in beside her, all she felt was a strange sense of inevitability, like her life had been a story waiting for this chapter to begin. The driver pulled out without a word, and the city streamed past the tinted windows in ribbons of light. Lorenzo was quiet beside her, checking his phone, his jaw tight. In profile, he was devastating. Not beautiful the way Diego had been beautiful, all easy charm and calculated smiles. Lorenzo was harder, colder, a man forged in fires Venna couldn't begin to imagine. "Those men," she said, because the silence was becoming unbearable. "Why did they think I was connected to your family?" "Because I don't usually intervene in strangers' problems." He glanced at her, and there was something almost like amusement in his eyes. "They saw me look at you. That made you interesting to them." "So I'm in danger because you were looking at me." "Well, why were you looking at me?" He didn't respond to that. Ironic, isn't it? He diverted you and returned to his phone. "Don't worry. By tomorrow, they'll know you're nobody. You'll fly back to Madrid and forget this happened." Nobody. The word stung more than it should have. "Right. Nobody," she mumbled. He looked at her again, really looked at her this time, and Venna felt it like a physical touch. His gaze traveled from her face, down to where her hands twisted in her lap, then back up again. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" "I meant you're not part of this world. You're not involved in my business or my enemy's business. You're just a girl who had too much to drink and caught the wrong kind of attention." His voice softened slightly. "That's good, Venna. Stay nobody. It's safer." The car was slowing, and Venna realized with a start that they weren't at the Ritz-Carlton. They were pulling up to a building that made the Ritz look modest, all gleaming glass and architectural impossible angles, the kind of place that didn't bother with price tags, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The driver opened her door, and Lorenzo stepped out first, turning to offer his hand. "This isn't my hotel," Venna said, not moving. "No, this is my home." He saw her expression and added, "You're not safe at your hotel tonight, not until I make some calls. Dmitri and his men need to understand you're off limits. That conversation is easier to have without you in the middle of it. You'll stay here tonight, take the guest room, and tomorrow morning I'll have my driver take you to your hotel." Every warning bell in Venna's head was ringing. Strange man, strange city, going to his apartment alone. This was how horror movies started, how women disappeared. But when she looked at Lorenzo's outstretched hand, she didn't see a threat. She saw someone tired, someone who'd interrupted his evening to pull a stranger out of danger, someone who was offering protection, even though it complicated his life. "I don't even know you," she said quietly. "I know. That's why you can trust me. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have bothered with the rescue." He wiggled his fingers impatiently. "Come on. It's late, you're exhausted, and I have phone calls to make that will be significantly easier if you're somewhere I know you're safe." So for the second time that night, Venna said yes to something that terrified her. She took his hand and let him pull her from the car. His palm was warm and calloused, not the soft hands of someone who'd never worked. They rode another elevator, this one requiring a fingerprint scan along with a key card, and Venna watched the numbers climb. 37, 38, 39. When they finally stopped, the doors opened directly into his apartment. Penthouse, she corrected herself. This wasn't an apartment. This was money and power made manifest in steel and glass and space. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around three sides, offering a view of Dubai that took her breath away. The interior was surprisingly sparse, minimalist furniture in greys and blacks. But what caught her attention were the books, shelves and shelves of them, lining one entire wall, and art. Real art, not prints. She recognized a Miro sketch, a sculpture that might have been a Giacometti. "Bathroom is through there," Lorenzo said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over a chair. In his white shirt, she could see the breadth of his shoulders, the controlled strength in every movement. "Guest room is the second door on the left. There should be clothes in the closet that will fit you. My sister leaves things here sometimes." "You have a sister?" "Sophia. She's at university in London studying medicine." He moved to a bar cart and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. "She'd probably like you. She has a soft spot for strays." "I'm not a stray. Tonight you are." He raised his glass to her in a mock toast. "Welcome to my home, Venna from Madrid. Try not to steal anything." She should have been offended. Instead, she found herself almost smiling. "I'll resist the urge." "Good. Because everything in this apartment is either insured for 6 figures or worth far more than that on the black market." He said it casually, but there was weight behind the words, a reminder of who he was, what he was. "I need to make those calls. Help yourself to food, water, whatever you need. Just don't leave the apartment." "Am I a prisoner?" Lorenzo paused halfway to what she assumed was his office, turning to look at her with an expression she couldn't read. "No, you're a guest. But if you leave before I handle this situation with Dmitri, you might not make it to the street. Your choice." Then he disappeared through a door and closed it behind him, leaving Venna alone in a stranger's penthouse, surrounded by expensive art and the kind of view that people killed for. She could hear his voice through the door, speaking rapid Spanish, then switching to what sounded like Italian. The words were muffled, but the tone was clear, cold, commanding, absolute. Venna walked to the windows, pressing her palm against the glass. Somewhere below, Dubai glittered and pulsed, a city that never slept. Somewhere in that sprawl was her hotel room, her suitcase, her plane ticket home, her real life, waiting to resume. But up here, in this impossible space, with a dangerous man making dangerous calls in the next room, real life felt very far away. She found herself looking at the books instead. Philosophy, history, architecture. That made her pause. She pulled out a worn copy of Le Corbusier's Toward an Architecture, and a photo fell out. Lorenzo, younger, maybe 20, standing with an older woman and a little girl. The woman had his eyes, that same dark intensity. She was beautiful and smiling, her hand on his shoulder. The little girl, Sophia probably, was missing her 2 front teeth and grinning at the camera like it held all the world's secrets. That was taken 2 weeks before she died. Venna spun around, clutching the photo. Lorenzo had emerged from his office, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked exhausted. "I'm sorry. I wasn't snooping. It's fine." He held out his hand for the photo and she gave it back. He studied it for a long moment before sliding it back into the book. "My mother. Heart attack. Sudden. Brutal. Sophia was 9. I was 22. Exactly the age where you think you're invincible and then life teaches you otherwise." "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Doesn't bring her back." He moved to the bar cart and refilled his glass, then poured a second without asking, and brought it to her. "You should sleep. It's almost 3 a.m. Venna took the glass and their fingers brushed. That same spark of warmth she'd felt in the car, in the elevator. She took a sip, expensive whiskey, smooth and burning, and watched him watch her. "The situation with those men," she said. "Is it handled? For now. They know you're under my protection. They won't touch you." He drank, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're safe, Venna. I promise you that." "Why do I believe you?" "Because I keep my promises." He set down his glass. "And because you're smart enough to know that if I wanted something from you, I'd have already taken it." The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they sounded almost sad. Venna found herself taking another sip, then another, the alcohol warming her from the inside out. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and something else, something that felt dangerously like curiosity. "What do you do, Lorenzo Santos? What business are you in that makes men like that afraid of you?" she asked. "Nothing you want to know about." He picked up his glass again. "Go to bed, Venna. You leave at noon. I'll have my driver take you to your hotel at 8 to collect your things, then straight to the airport. I'm afraid your holiday in Dubai will be cut short for your own safety." Venna frowned. "You're dismissing me." "I'm protecting you. There's a difference." She should have gone then, should have walked down that hallway, locked herself in the guest room, counted down the hours until she could leave. Instead, she heard herself say, "What if I don't want to go?" Lorenzo went very still. In the low light of the apartment, his face was half shadows. "Don't. Don't what? Don't look at me like that. Don't make this complicated." He set down his glass with more force than necessary. "You're leaving tomorrow. This was one night, one mistake, one moment where our lives intersected by accident. Tomorrow, you go back to your world, and I stay in mine. What if I want to know your world? My world eats girls like you." He moved closer, and she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "My world is violence and money and compromise. You're an architecture student from Madrid who drinks too much and dances alone and still believes the world is fundamentally good. I don't want to be the thing that teaches you otherwise. Maybe I've already learned that lesson." Something flickered across his face. "The ex-boyfriend Lucia mentioned." Venna's breath caught. "You spoke to Lucia? How?" "I had someone call your hotel, get your information, make sure you were who you said you were. Lucia answered your room phone. She was worried when you didn't call back at midnight. I told her you were safe, that you'd call her in the morning." He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "She told me about Diego, about the bruises, about how you're in Dubai trying to remember how to be free." Tears burned behind Venna's eyes. "She had no right. She loves you. She wanted to make sure I understood that if I hurt you, she'd find a way to make me pay." His thumb traced her cheekbone, the touch feather-light. "I liked her immediately. Lorenzo, go to bed, Venna." His hand dropped. "Please, because if you stay here, looking at me like that, I'm going to do something we'll both regret." She should have listened. God, she should have listened. But Venna was tired of doing what she should do, tired of being careful, tired of letting fear make all her decisions. So instead of walking away, she stood on her toes and kissed him. For one heartbeat, Lorenzo didn't move. Then his hand was in her hair, and he was kissing her back, deep and hungry and devastating. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, and Venna felt herself falling into it, into him, into the terrible certainty that this was a mistake she wanted to make. He broke away first, his breathing ragged. "Venna, no." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a good man. Because you deserve better. Because in 3 months you'll hate yourself for this." His forehead pressed against hers. "Because I'm already halfway to wanting things I can't have, and you're making it so much worse." "What things?" "You. Here. Not for one night, but for more. For mornings and evenings and all the hours in between." His voice was raw. "I looked at you in that club, dancing like you were trying to shake off your own skin, and I thought, she's dangerous. I thought I should walk away. I thought she's going to destroy me." "I would never," Venna said, voice like a whisper. "You would. You will." He kissed her again, softer this time, almost gentle. "But not tonight. Tonight, you're going to go to bed alone, and tomorrow, you're going to leave, and we're both going to forget this happened." He was right. She knew he was right. But as Venna walked down that long hallway to the guest room, her lips still burning from his kiss, all she could think was that she didn't want to forget. She wanted to remember every second of this impossible night with this impossible man. The guest room was as minimalist as the rest of the apartment, all clean lines and expensive neutrality. She found Sophia's clothes in the closet, casual things, jeans and t-shirts, and changed out of her dress. Through the walls she could hear Lorenzo moving around, the clink of glass, the sound of another phone call, this one angrier than the last. Venna lay in the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the last 4 hours. Tried to understand how her life had gone from safe and small to terrifying and enormous in the span of a few dances, a few words, a few kisses that tasted like promises neither of them should make. Her phone buzzed. Lucia. Lorenzo's guy called. "Are you okay?" "What the hell happened?" Venna typed back. "Long story. I'm safe. I'll call you tomorrow." Lucia. "He sounded dangerous." "He is." "Should I be worried?" Venna stared at the text for a long time before responding. "I don't know." Because that was the truth. She didn't know if Lorenzo was something to fear or something to run toward. Didn't know if leaving tomorrow would be the smartest thing she'd ever done or the biggest regret of her life. Didn't know anything except that sleep was impossible. And somewhere in this apartment, a dangerous man was probably lying awake too, thinking about a girl he'd promised to let go. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe, drop a like and comment below. The story is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. Venna woke to the smell of coffee and something cooking, and for a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The club, the men, Lorenzo, the kiss that still tingled on her lips. She found him in the kitchen, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off arms she hadn't fully appreciated last night. He was cooking, focused and precise, and the domesticity of it jarred against everything she knew about him. This was a man who made dangerous calls in the middle of the night, who had enemies and protection and books on weapons in his office. But right now, he was just making breakfast. "Spanish tortilla," he said without turning around. "My mother's recipe. Sit." It wasn't a request. Venna sat at the kitchen island, accepting the coffee he slid toward her. It was perfect. Strong, no sugar, a splash of milk. "How did you know how I take my coffee?" "You ordered 3 cups last night at the club before you started dancing. I pay attention." He flipped the tortilla expertly, and the smell made her stomach growl. "There's orange juice in the fridge. Breakfast in 5 minutes. Your flight leaves at noon, so we need to leave here by 8:30. So they were doing this, pretending last night hadn't happened, that she hadn't kissed him, that he hadn't kissed her back like a drowning man finding air. Fine. Venna could pretend too. "Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for not stealing my Miro." He plated the tortilla and brought it to her, along with his own plate. "Eat. You didn't have dinner last night, and airport food is criminal." They ate in silence for a few minutes, and Venna had to admit it was delicious. Perfectly cooked eggs and potatoes, simple but made with care. She watched Lorenzo eat, the way his jaw worked, the way he was clearly avoiding looking at her directly. "Your mother taught you to cook," she said finally. She insisted, said a man who can't feed himself is a man who'll always be dependent. A small smile crossed his face, there and gone. She grew up poor in Seville, worked her way to a scholarship in London, met my father at a gala she was catering. He swept her off her feet, promised her the world, gave her a life in Dubai that she never quite felt comfortable in. She missed Spain? Every day. She used to say the heat here was all wrong, dry and angry instead of warm and welcoming. He took a sip of coffee. She was planning to move back, take Sophia and me with her. She'd found a house in Granada, started the paperwork. Then her heart gave out. "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault." but his voice was gentle. "Tell me about your mother." Venna hesitated, then found herself talking. About her mother's cancer diagnosis 2 years ago. About the treatments that drained their savings, and then some. About how she'd taken on every extra shift she could, dropped her social life, started counting euros the way other people counted breaths. About how guilty she felt being in Dubai while her mother was home in Madrid, probably trying to hide how much pain she was in. "She told me to come," Venna said. "She said I needed to live my life, not put it on hold for her. But I feel like I'm betraying her every day I'm not there." Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Love isn't martyrdom. Your mother doesn't want you to sacrifice your joy for her suffering. She wants you to live enough for both of you." "How do you know?" "Because that's what my mother wanted for us. The last thing she said to me was, 'Don't let my death make you small.' I've tried to honor that, even when it's hard." He stood, collecting their plates. "You should get ready. We need to leave soon." Venna wanted to push, wanted to ask more questions, wanted to delay the moment when she'd have to leave this apartment and this man and return to her regular life. But Lorenzo's body language was clear, conversation over. So she went back to the guest room, changed back into her black dress, and tried not to think about how different everything looked in the morning light. Lorenzo's driver was waiting when they came downstairs, the same silent man from last night. The drive to the Ritz-Carlton took 15 minutes, and Lorenzo spent the entire time on his phone, speaking in clipped Italian to someone who was clearly arguing with him. Venna caught words here and there. Her Italian was rusty, but enough to understand they were discussing shipments and contracts, and things she probably shouldn't be hearing. At her hotel, Lorenzo walked her up to her room while the driver waited. It felt surreal, this dangerous man in his expensive clothes navigating the cheerful luxury of a tourist hotel. Other guests stared, sensing something in him that set off instinctual alarms. He ignored them all. Venna's room was exactly as she'd left it. Unmade bed, half-packed suitcase, the detritus of a vacation she'd been too numb to fully enjoy. Lorenzo stayed by the door while she gathered her things, checking his watch, clearly eager to end this. "I can get myself to the airport," Venna said, zipping her suitcase. "You don't have to." "I said I'd get you there safely. I keep my promises." "Right. Your promises." She turned to face him. "What about last night? What about what you said about wanting things you can't have?" "Last night was a mistake." The words landed like a slap. "A mistake." "Yes." But his eyes told a different story. "You're going home, Venna. You're going to finish your architecture degree. You're going to take care of your mother. You're going to meet some nice boy who works in an office and dreams normal dreams and gives you a normal life. And you're going to be happy. What if I don't want normal? Everyone wants normal. They just don't know it until they've tried the alternative." He checked his watch again. "We need to go." The drive to the airport was silent. Venna stared out the window, watching Dubai streak past, and tried to figure out why her chest hurt so much. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? To go home, to be safe, to forget this had happened? But when the airport came into view, all she felt was loss. Lorenzo walked her as far as security would allow, carrying her suitcase, even though she insisted she could manage. At the checkpoint, he finally set it down and looked at her properly for the first time all morning. "Goodbye, Venna from Madrid." "That's it? Just goodbye?" What else is there? But his hand came up, tucking that same strand of hair behind her ear. Go home. Be safe. Forget you ever met me. What if I can't? You will. In a week, I'll be just a strange story you tell Lucia over wine. His thumb brushed her cheek. Take care of yourself. Then he was walking away, his back straight, his pace measured. Venna watched him go, watched him disappear into the crowd, and felt something fundamental shift inside her, like a door closing, or maybe opening. She couldn't tell which. On the plane, she tried to sleep, but kept seeing his face. In Madrid, Lucia picked her up from the airport and took one look at her and said, "What happened?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." "Did he hurt you?" "No." Venna stared out at the familiar streets of her city. "That's the problem. He saved me, then sent me away, and now I can't stop thinking about him." "That's probably for the best, Ven. Men like that, men with that kind of power, they're dangerous in ways that don't leave bruises." Venna knew Lucia was right, but knowing and feeling were two different things, and what she felt was an ache she couldn't name and didn't know how to fix. She threw herself back into her life. Classes, work, her mother's treatments. She tried to forget Lorenzo Santos existed. But at night, alone in her small apartment, she'd remember the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd kissed her like she was something precious and breakable, the way he'd cooked her breakfast and talked about his mother and told her to be happy with someone safe. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Venna was pulling a double shift at the cafe when her phone rang. Unknown number, international code. "Venna Martinez?" The voice was American, female, professional. "Yes?" "My name is Agent Sarah Chen. I'm with the FBI. I need to speak with you about Lorenzo Santos." Everything stopped. The cafe, the noise, her heartbeat. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We have footage of you leaving Vertigo with him the night of March 15th. We have footage of you entering his building. We have footage of you leaving the next morning." Agent Chen's voice was calm, implacable. "We know you spent the night at his apartment. We need to talk to you about that night, Ms. Morales. We can do it here in Madrid, or we can involve local authorities. Your choice." Venna's hand was shaking. "He saved me from some men at a club. He took me to his apartment because they thought I was connected to him. That's all. I left the next day. I haven't spoken to him since." "That's all?" There was something sharp in Chen's voice. "Miss Martinez, Lorenzo Santos is one of the most dangerous arms dealers in the Middle East. He sells weapons to warlords, dictators, anyone with money and no morals. The weapons he sold have killed thousands of civilians, children, entire families." "No." The word came out strangled. "He told me he had a code. He said he never made deal with bad people, never dealt in human trafficking. He lied. They all lie." Papers rustling. "I'm sending you an address. Meet me there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone, especially not him. If you warn him that we're investigating him, you'll be charged as an accessory. Do you understand?" "I haven't even talked to him." "Good. Let's keep it that way. 2 p.m., Ms. Martinez. Don't make me come find you." The line went dead. Venna stood in the middle of the cafe, her phone pressed to her ear, her mind racing. Arms dealer, thousands dead, children. It couldn't be true. Lorenzo was complicated, yes. Dangerous, yes. But he wasn't a monster. He couldn't be. Not the man who'd cooked her breakfast and talked about his mother's dreams. But she barely knew him. One night, a few hours. What did she really know about Lorenzo Santos, except that he had enemies and made calls in the middle of the night and lived in a penthouse that screamed blood money? Lucia found her standing there 10 minutes later, pale and shaking. "Ven, what's wrong?" "Nothing. I need to go home. Can you cover the rest of my shift?" "Of course. But what happened?" "I'll tell you later. I promise. I just need to go." She didn't tell Lucia later. Didn't tell anyone. The next day, Venna took the metro to the address Agent Chen had sent, a small office building in a business district she'd never had reason to visit. Inside, a man was waiting with Chen, younger, Latino, with tired eyes and a wedding ring he kept spinning around his finger. "Miss Martinez, I'm Agent Marcus Rivera." He gestured to a chair. "Thank you for coming." The office was deliberately bland, the kind of space designed to make people uncomfortable. 2 chairs, 1 table, harsh fluorescent lighting. Chen sat across from Venna while Rivera stayed standing, and together they made her feel like a criminal before a word was spoken. "Let's start with the night you met Lorenzo Santos," Chen said, pulling out a folder thick with papers. "Tell us everything." So Venna did. The club, the Russian men, Lorenzo's intervention, the drive to his apartment. She left out the kiss, the breakfast, the way her heart had raced when he touched her hair. Those were hers, private, not for these strangers to dissect. When she finished, Chen and Rivera exchanged a look. Then Chen opened the folder and started laying out photos. Crime scenes, bodies, a school in Syria reduced to rubble, a marketplace in Yemen, smoke still rising, children's shoes scattered in the dirt. "These are the results of the weapons Lorenzo Santos sold," Chen said quietly. "This school was hit by missiles he provided to a Syrian warlord. 32 children died. This marketplace was targeted using intelligence equipment he smuggled across 3 borders. 18 civilians. This village." "Stop!" Venna's voice broke. "Please stop." "We can't stop, Ms. Martinez, because he won't stop. In the 5 years we've been tracking and trying to link him directly to all these, Santos has brokered over $200 million in illegal weapons sales. He's responsible for thousands of deaths. And he's careful, so careful that we've never been able to touch him." Chen leaned forward. "Until now. Until you. I don't understand. I told you, I only met him once. But he saved you. He took you to his private residence. He protected you from his enemies." Rivera finally sat down. "That's not nothing. Santos doesn't help random girls in clubs. He doesn't bring strangers to his home. He doesn't expose himself like that, which means you got under his skin." Venna's laugh was bitter. "You didn't see him the next morning. He couldn't wait to get rid of me." "Or he was trying to protect you from his world." Chen slid another photo across. Lorenzo standing outside a building talking to a man Venna didn't recognize. "We've been watching him for months. We know his patterns, his contacts, his movements. What we don't have is evidence. Everything he does is behind layers of shell corporations and middlemen. We need someone on the inside." The room went very cold. "No. Hear us out. No. Absolutely not. I'm not doing whatever you're about to ask me to do." Rivera's voice was gentle. "Your mother's cancer treatments. They're expensive, aren't they? We pulled your financial records. You're drowning in debt. Working double shifts, skipping meals, behind on rent. That's private. Nothing's private when international security is involved." Chen's expression softened slightly. "We're not trying to blackmail you, Ms. Martinez. We're offering you a way out. Help us get evidence on Santos and we'll pay you 200,000 euros. Enough to cover your mother's treatments for years. Enough to finish your degree without working yourself to death. Enough to actually have a life. 200,000 euros. The number was so large it didn't feel real. That was freedom. That was her mother living instead of dying by inches. That was everything she'd been sacrificing herself for, handed to her on a silver platter. What would I have to do? Go back to Dubai, contact Santos, tell him you made a mistake, that you can't stop thinking about him, that you want to see him again. Chen pulled out another photo. Men like Santos, they have egos. They like to win. If you come back, he'll take you back. And once you're inside his world, you'll have access to his apartment, his office, his files. All we need is evidence. Photos of documents, recordings of conversations, proof that ties him directly to the weapons sales. You want me to spy on him? We want you to help us stop a mass murderer. Rivera's wedding ring spun faster. I lost my partner 3 years ago in a raid on one of Santos's shipments. He had a wife, 2 kids. They were at his funeral, and his daughter asked me why her daddy wasn't coming home. I didn't have an answer for her, because men like Santos operate in the shadows, and we can't reach them. Venna looked at the photos spread across the table. The rubble, the bodies, the shoes. If I say no, then you say no. We're not going to force you. But Chen's eyes said something different. But those deaths will keep happening, and you'll know you could have stopped them. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. Chen gathered the photos back into the folder. After that, we'll have to pursue other options. Here's my card. Call me when you've decided. Venna took the card with numb fingers and walked out into the Madrid sunshine. Everything looked the same. The buildings, the people, the pigeons fighting over breadcrumbs. But she felt fundamentally altered. Like she'd walked into that office as one person and emerged as someone else entirely. At home, she stared at her phone for an hour before calling her mother. Rosa Martinez answered on the 3rd ring, breathless and in pain she was trying to hide. Mija, I was just thinking about you. How are you? I'm fine, Mama. How are you feeling? Oh, you know, the same. Which meant worse. The doctor wants to try a new treatment, but it's very expensive. I told him we'd think about it. Which meant they couldn't afford it. Which meant her mother was choosing between treatment and keeping a roof over Venna's head. Venna closed her eyes and saw those photos again. The school, the marketplace, children's shoes. Mama, what if we could afford it? What if money wasn't an issue? Mija, don't talk nonsense. Money is always an issue for people like us. But what if? Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then I would say yes to the treatment. I would like to see you graduate, maybe even dance at your wedding someday. Is that selfish? No, Mama, that's not selfish at all. After they hung up, Venna sat in her apartment as twilight turned to night. She thought about Lorenzo cooking breakfast, talking about his mother who wanted him to live large instead of small. She thought about the way he'd kissed her, like she mattered. She thought about Agent Chen's photos and Rivera's dead partner and children who would never grow up because of weapons Lorenzo had sold. She thought about 200,000 euros and her mother's hope when she told her the treatment was possible. At 11 p.m., she called the number on Agent Chen's card. I'll do it. Smart choice, Ms. Martinez. Can you come back to the office tomorrow? We'll need to brief you properly, give you equipment, and establish protocols. Venna paused. Hold on a second. What kind of equipment? Small camera, audio recorder, a few other things. Nothing complicated. You'll be fine. Would she? Venna wasn't sure about anything anymore, except that she just agreed to betray a man who'd shown her more kindness in one night than Diego had shown her in 2 years. A man who was also possibly responsible for thousands of deaths. The briefing took 3 hours. Chen and Rivera walked her through everything. How to contact Lorenzo, what to say, how to plant the recording devices, where to hide the camera. They gave her a phone with encrypted messaging, showed her how to send reports, drilled her on her cover story until she could recite it in her sleep. Remember, Chen said as they finished, men like Santos are dangerous precisely because they're charming. He'll make you feel special, important, safe. That's how he operates. Don't fall for it. Don't forget what he really is. But Venna remembered the exhaustion in Lorenzo's eyes when he talked about his mother. Remembered the way he'd sent her away because he thought she deserved better. Was that man the same one who sold weapons to warlords? Could both things be true at once? When do I leave? 2 days. We've already booked your ticket, set up a hotel under a different name. You'll text Santos tonight. Something simple. I can't stop thinking about you. Can we talk? Rivera pulled out a burner phone. Use this. We'll be monitoring, but he won't be able to trace it back to us. That night, alone in her apartment, Venna stared at the burner phone for an hour before typing the message. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to retype it 3 times. Finally, she hit send and immediately wanted to take it back. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. I thought you were forgetting me. Her heart lurched. I tried. How's that working out? Not well. A longer pause. Then, you shouldn't contact me, Venna. We talked about this. I know, but I can't stop thinking about that night, about what you said, about wanting things you couldn't have. She closed her eyes, hating herself. What if I'm one of those things? You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. I'm back in Madrid, safe like you wanted. But I'm not happy. I'm not forgetting. The lies came easier than she expected. I need to see you again. 10 minutes passed with no response. Venna was starting to think she'd miscalculated, that Chen and Rivera had been wrong about Lorenzo's ego, about his interest in her. Then, when? His voice came out sluggish. I can be in Dubai by Friday. Don't come to my apartment. I'll send you an address, a restaurant. We'll talk, and then you'll understand why this is a mistake. Maybe I want to make mistakes. Maybe you don't know the cost of the mistakes I offer. But he sent the address. Friday, 8 p.m. Don't be late. Venna reported back to Chen and Rivera, and they looked pleased in that grim way people look when they're sending someone into danger for the greater good. You did great, Chen said. He's hooked. Now the real work begins. The real work. The lies, the cameras, the betrayal. Venna went home and threw up, then cried, then stared at her ceiling and wondered if this was what selling your soul felt like. Clean and simple, just a phone call and a plane ticket, and the promise of money that could save the person you loved most. On Thursday, she called her mother and told her about a scholarship opportunity that would help with the medical bills. Rosa cried with relief, and Venna cried with guilt, and neither of them said what they were both thinking, that miracles didn't happen to people like them without a price. Friday morning, Venna boarded a plane to Dubai with a suitcase full of summer dresses and a heart full of dread. The restaurant was small by Dubai standards, tucked into a side street in the old district, all whitewashed walls and jasmine vines. Nothing like the gleaming excess of Vertigo or Lorenzo's penthouse. Venna arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a blue dress Lucia had insisted she pack, and tried to steady her breathing. The camera was in her purse, disguised as a compact mirror. The audio recorder was sewn into the lining of her dress. She felt like a spy from a movie, except in the movies, the spy always knew what they were doing. Venna felt like she was drowning. Lorenzo arrived exactly at 8, wearing dark jeans and a white linen shirt, casual in a way that somehow made him more devastating. He saw her at the corner table and paused just for a moment, and she watched something cross his face. Relief? Regret? Both? "You came," he said, sitting across from her. "You invited me. I half hoped you wouldn't show." He ordered wine without looking at the menu, then finally met her eyes. "Why are you really here, Venna?" "I told you. I couldn't stop thinking about you." "That's not a reason to fly back to Dubai. That's infatuation. It passes." "Does it? Have you stopped thinking about me?" The waiter arrived with the wine, and Lorenzo waited until he left before answering. "No, I haven't, which is precisely why you shouldn't be here." "What are you so afraid of?" "I'm not afraid. I'm realistic." He drank, and she noticed his hand wasn't quite steady. "You're a good girl from Madrid, with dreams of being an architect and taking care of your mother and living a normal life. I'm a man who operates in shadows and makes enemies and wakes up most mornings unsure if I'll survive the day. There's no universe where this works. What if I don't want to be normal anymore?" He chuckled softly. "Everyone says that, until they've tried the alternative." He leaned forward. "My world isn't romantic, Venna. It's not expensive dinners and penthouse views. It's violence and paranoia and looking over your shoulder every second of every day. It's watching people you care about get hurt because they were foolish enough to care about you." "Is that what happened? Someone you cared about got hurt?" His jaw tightened. "Yes, multiple someones. Which is why I don't let people in anymore. Which is why I sent you away 3 weeks ago. Which is why you should finish this very expensive wine I just ordered and get on a plane back to Madrid." But he hadn't left yet, hadn't stood up and walked away. He was still sitting there, looking at her like she was a problem he couldn't solve, and Venna recognized that look. She'd worn it herself, staring at her phone, debating whether to send that first text. "What if I don't want to leave?" "Then you're an idiot." But his lips quirked slightly. A beautiful idiot, but an idiot nonetheless. A tender smile etched at the corner of her lips, but faded quickly. They ordered food neither of them ate, talked in circles around what they both wanted, danced around the truth like it was something that might bite. Lorenzo told her about a project he was consulting on. A new hotel, all sustainable architecture and cutting-edge design. She forgot he was supposed to be an arms dealer and got excited, sketching ideas on her napkin. And for 10 minutes, they were just two people who loved buildings and beauty. Then his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his face went cold. "I have to take this. 2 minutes." He stepped outside, and Venna saw her chance. His jacket was draped over his chair, and she could see the edge of a phone peeking from the pocket. The camera in her purse was meant for documents, but it would work for photographing his phone contacts, his messages. Don't think. Just move. She reached for the jacket, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. The phone was newer than she expected, password protected, useless. But there was a business card in the inner pocket, Dmitry Volkov, with a handwritten note, Dubai Harbour, Warehouse 7, midnight. Venna photographed it quickly, her hands shaking, and had just returned the jacket to its place when Lorenzo came back inside. Sorry about that. Business. He looked tired suddenly, older. I should get you back to your hotel. I don't want to go back yet. Venna. Show me your city. The real Dubai, not the tourist version. Show me what you see when you walk these streets. He studied her for a long moment. Why do I feel like saying yes to you is the beginning of something I won't be able to stop? Maybe because it is. Lorenzo paid the bill and led her out into the night. Dubai after dark was different than she remembered. Less frantic, more alive. He took her to a night market in the Al Fahidi district, all spices and laughter and the kind of chaos that felt like home. They drank mint tea from tiny cups and watched an old man play the oud, and for a little while Venna forgot why she was really there. My mother used to bring me here, Lorenzo said, his shoulder brushing hers as they walked. Every Friday after school. She said the markets reminded her of Seville, even though they're nothing alike. I think she was just desperate for anything that felt less sterile than our apartment. Why did she stay, if she was unhappy? My father. She loved him, even though he was difficult, even though his business made her uncomfortable, even though she knew, deep down, that the money came from places she didn't want to think about. He stopped walking. She was like you, actually. Good heart, strong conscience, terrible taste in men. You're not a terrible man. You don't know that. Then tell me what you really do, Lorenzo. Your business, your enemies, all of it. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. The urge to confess warring with the need to protect her from the truth. Finally, he said, "Walk with me." They walked for 20 minutes in silence, winding through narrow streets until they reached a small park overlooking the creek. At this hour, it was nearly empty, just a few late-night joggers and an old couple feeding pigeons. Lorenzo sat on a bench and gestured for her to join him. My father built an empire on weapons, legal at first, then gradually less so. By the time I was old enough to understand, we were supplying half the black market in the Middle East. I hated it, hated him for what he'd become, hated my mother for staying. What changed? She died, and suddenly I was 22, responsible for Sophia, inheriting a business I despised, but didn't know how to leave. My father said, "You can walk away and watch everything I built crumble. Watch our enemies come for your sister, or you can step up and be a man." His laugh was bitter. Some choice. So you stayed? I stayed, but I tried to change things. I refused to sell to terrorists, cut ties with the worst of my father's contacts, tried to move the business toward legitimate defense contracts. It worked for a while. Then my father had a stroke, and I inherited everything, including his enemies. Venna's chest hurt. This wasn't the story she was supposed to be hearing. This wasn't the monster Chen and Rivera had described. The men at the club. Dmitry. He was one of those enemies. Dmitry Volkov. Russian, vicious, deals in everything from weapons to human trafficking. My father did business with him for years. When I took over, I cut him off. He's been trying to destroy me ever since." Lorenzo turned to look at her. "That's why he had his men approach you. They thought you were connected to me, thought they could use you to get leverage. That's the world I live in, Venna. That's what happens to people who get close to me." "But you saved me," she said, a hint of confusion written on her face. "Because I'm selfish. Because I saw you dancing, looking so alive and beautiful. I couldn't let them take that from you. Couldn't let my world touch something that beautiful." His hand found hers. "Then you came back, and I should have sent you away immediately, but I didn't. Because I'm selfish, and you make me want things I gave up wanting years ago." "What things?" "Normal. Peace. Someone to come home to who doesn't flinch when I walk through the door." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You make me remember that. I wanted to be a chef once, that I used to read poetry, that there's a version of me that could have been good. This was the moment. Chen and Rivera had prepared her for this. When he opened up, when he made himself vulnerable, that was when she was supposed to push. Ask about his business. Get him to name names, describe deals, give her something concrete. But looking at Lorenzo's face in the lamplight, seeing the exhaustion and hope and fear all mixed together, Venna couldn't do it. "What if you could leave?" she heard herself say instead. "What if you just walked away?" "I have enemies who'd kill me the moment I showed weakness. I have a sister who depends on me. I have a business that would collapse and take hundreds of people's livelihoods with it." He squeezed her hand. "And I have crimes in my past that would catch up with me eventually. You can't just walk away from my life, Venna. You can only run, and running means leaving everyone behind. Then run. Take Sophia. Disappear. And you? Would you come with us? Leave your mother, your degree, your whole life behind for a man you barely know?" The question hung between them, heavy and impossible. Venna thought about her mother in Madrid, about the 200,000 euros, about the camera in her purse and the recorder in her dress, about Agent Chen's photos of dead children and Rivera's dead partner. "I don't know," she whispered, and it was the most honest thing she'd said all night. Lorenzo stood, pulling her up with him. "Come back to my apartment, not for anything except sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't want you alone in some hotel room, thinking about all the reasons this is a terrible idea." Venna should have said no, should have gone back to her hotel, reported to Chen and Rivera, stuck to the plan. Instead, she said yes, because despite everything, despite the mission and the lies and the guilt eating her alive, she wanted one more night in that penthouse. One more night pretending she was someone who could have this, have him, without everything exploding. The drive back to his building was quiet. The elevator ride was quieter. In his apartment, nothing had changed. Same minimalist furniture, same art, same wall of books. But everything felt different, weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Guest room is still the second door on the left," Lorenzo said. "Sophia's clothes are still there. Help yourself." "Where will you be?" "In my office, working. I have a meeting tomorrow I need to prepare for." The meeting with Dmitri at the warehouse. Venna knew she should ask about it, get details, but the words stuck in her throat. "Okay." She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Venna, thank you." "For what?" "For coming back. For making me remember, just for tonight, what it feels like to want something other than survival." In the guest room, Venna changed into one of Sophia's t-shirts and lay in the dark, listening to Lorenzo move around his office. She should have been planning her next move, figuring out how to get into his office, into his safe, into his secrets. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and wondered how you betrayed someone who was already destroying themselves. Her encrypted phone buzzed. Chen. Status update, Venna typed. I'm in, staying at his apartment. He has a meeting tomorrow night, warehouse at the harbor. Might be relevant. Good work. Plant the cameras tomorrow while he's out. We need access to his office. Understood. She set the phone aside and tried to sleep, but all she could think about was Lorenzo sitting in his office, preparing for a meeting that might get him killed, carrying the weight of a business he hated because walking away meant leaving his sister vulnerable. Morning arrived too slowly. Venna found Lorenzo making coffee, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept at all. You look terrible, she said. Thank you. That's exactly what every man wants to hear. But he smiled, handing her a cup. I have that meeting tonight. I'll be gone most of the day, back around midnight. You're welcome to stay here, but I understand if you'd rather go back to your hotel. This was it. Her chance to plant the cameras, to search his office, to do what Chen and Rivera had sent her here to do. I'll stay. Maybe explore the city a little. Come back this evening. Use the driver. His name is Rashid. He'll take you anywhere you want to go. Lorenzo drained his coffee. And Venna, don't go to my office. I have sensitive documents out. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I don't trust anyone with my business. The irony was suffocating. I understand. He left 20 minutes later, and Venna was alone in the penthouse with a handful of surveillance devices and a conscience that was screaming at her to stop. If you're enjoying this story so far, please subscribe and hit the like button. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. She waited an hour to make sure he wasn't coming back, then pulled out the equipment Chen and Rivera had given her. 2 cameras, tiny as buttons, designed to look like decorative elements. 1 audio recorder disguised as a phone charger. Instructions that had seemed simple in Madrid, but felt impossibly complex now. The first camera went in the living room, positioned to capture anyone coming or going. Easy. The second should go in his office, but Lorenzo had specifically told her not to go in there. She stood outside the door for 10 minutes, her hand on the knob, fighting with herself. He's an arms dealer. Children have died because of him. Your mother needs this money. This is bigger than your feelings. But what if Chen and Rivera were wrong? What if Lorenzo really was trying to change things, trying to escape his father's legacy? What if she destroyed him for crimes he didn't actually commit? Her phone buzzed. Rivera. Stop stalling. Every minute you waste is another minute he could come back. Venna opened the office door. Inside was exactly what she'd expected, and nothing like it. One wall was entirely windows, floor to ceiling, overlooking the city. The desk was expensive and neat, a laptop closed on its surface, papers stacked in precise piles. But the other walls were covered in something she hadn't anticipated. Maps. Dubai, Syria, Yemen, locations marked with pins and dates, and photos. Not of weapons or deals, but of buildings destroyed by violence, schools, hospitals, marketplaces. Her hands were shaking as she moved closer. Each photo had notes in Lorenzo's handwriting. Al-Hasakah School, March 2023. 32 dead, ages 6 to 14. Weapons, Russian RPGs, purchased through Volkov. Not my deal. Another. Sana'a Market, June 2023. 18 dead. Intelligence equipment traced to Dimitri Arms, not Santos Industries. These weren't the records of deals he'd made. These were records of deals he was trying to prove he hadn't made. Evidence he was collecting against someone else. Venna's breath came in gasps. She pulled out her phone and started photographing everything, but not for Chen and Rivera. For herself. For proof that she'd been catastrophically wrong about what was happening here. The safe was behind a painting. Of course it was. And she had the combination because Chen had somehow obtained it. Inside were more documents, passports for Lorenzo and Sofia with different names, tickets to Argentina dated 6 months from now, and a box. She opened the box with trembling fingers. An engagement ring. Simple, elegant, with a small sapphire instead of a diamond, because sapphires were her favorite, though she'd never told him that. But there was a note underneath. For whenever I'm brave enough to ask the girl from Madrid to stay. Venna was crying now, ugly sobs that she couldn't control. This man wasn't a monster. He was trapped, collecting evidence against the real criminals in his world, planning an escape he'd probably never take because it meant abandoning people who depended on him. And she'd come here to destroy him because Chen and Rivera had shown her photos and lied about who was really responsible. She photographed everything in the safe, including the engagement ring, then put it all back exactly as she'd found it. The camera in her purse stayed in her purse. She couldn't do this. Wouldn't do this. Whatever Chen and Rivera were really after, she wasn't going to help them anymore. Back in the living room, she called the encrypted number. Chen answered on the first ring. I found his office. I'm not doing this. Silence. Then, excuse me? He's not responsible for those deaths. He's collecting evidence against the people who are. You lied to me. Ms. Martinez, you're emotional. Take a breath and think about what you're saying. I'm saying you manipulated me. You showed me photos of crimes Lorenzo didn't commit and asked me to betray a man who's trying to do the right thing. In an impossible situation, I won't help you. Then you won't get paid, and your mother won't get treatment, and you'll have betrayed Lorenzo for nothing, because we'll find another way to get what we need from him. Chen's voice hardened. Think very carefully about your next move, Ms. Martinez. I've thought about it. I'm done. She hung up and immediately called her mother, needing to hear her voice, needing to remember why she'd agreed to this nightmare in the first place. Rosa answered, breathless as always. Mija, is something wrong? No, Mama. I just wanted to hear your voice. How are you feeling? The pain is manageable today. The new doctor says maybe we can start that treatment after all. I told him about your scholarship. The hope in her mother's voice was crushing. You're doing so much for me, Venna. I'm so proud of you. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. Now go live your life. Don't spend all your time worrying about your old mother. After they hung up, Venna sat in Lorenzo's minimalist living room and tried to figure out what to do next. She couldn't keep working with the FBI, but she couldn't tell Lorenzo either. How did you confess to someone that you'd been sent to spy on them, that you'd agreed to betray them, even if you'd changed your mind? Her regular phone buzzed. Lorenzo, how's your day going? The normalcy of the question made her want to scream. Good. Went to the spice markets. Coming back to your place soon. Good. I'll probably be home late. Don't wait up. Be safe. Always. But he wasn't always safe. He was walking into a meeting with a man who wanted him dead, carrying the weight of evidence that could destroy powerful people. And Venna had just made an enemy of the FBI by refusing to help them. They were both in danger now, and neither of them knew how to save the other. Venna spent the afternoon pacing Lorenzo's apartment like a caged animal, trying to decide what to do. At 7 p.m., her encrypted phone rang. Rivera, this time. "We need to meet, tonight. There are things you don't understand." "I'm not interested." "Lorenzo Santos is going to die tonight if you don't listen to me. Dmitry Volkov has a hit ordered for that meeting at the warehouse. We've intercepted communications. Santos walks in there. He doesn't walk out. So you can keep playing naive, or you can meet me and help us save his life." The line went dead before she could respond. Venna stood frozen, the phone clutched in her hand, her heart racing. Was Rivera lying? Was this another manipulation? But what if he wasn't? What if Lorenzo really was walking into a trap? She called Lorenzo directly. It went to voicemail. "Lorenzo, it's Venna. Please don't go to that meeting tonight. I have a bad feeling. Call me back." No response. She tried again. Nothing. At 8 p.m., she called Rashid, Lorenzo's driver. "I need you to take me to Dubai Harbor, Warehouse 7. Now." "Miss Venna, Mr. Santos said—" "I don't care what he said. Either you drive me, or I'll take a taxi and probably get killed, and you can explain to Lorenzo why you let that happen." 5 minutes later, they were speeding through Dubai's evening traffic, Rashid's jaw tight with disapproval. Venna's mind raced. If Dmitry was planning to kill Lorenzo, she needed to warn him. But showing up at the warehouse would expose her. Expose that she knew about his meeting, that she'd been going through his things, that she wasn't who she claimed to be. Unless... She pulled out her personal phone and texted, "I know this sounds crazy, but please trust me. Don't go into that warehouse. Dmitry is planning to kill you tonight. I'll explain everything, but please, please don't go inside." Sent. No response. The harbor came into view, industrial and dark, warehouses looming like sleeping giants. Warehouse 7 was at the far end, a single light visible through grimy windows. "Stop here," Venna told Rashid. "Stay in the car." "Miss Venna, this is dangerous. Mr. Santos is about to die if I don't do this. Stay here. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, call the police." She ran toward the warehouse, her heels clicking on concrete, her dress completely inappropriate for whatever she was about to walk into. The door was slightly ajar, voices echoing from inside. She recognized Lorenzo's voice, calm and controlled, then Dmitry's, thick with accent and anger. "Think I don't know what you've been doing? Collecting evidence, building a case against me, against everything your father built. You think you're clever, Lorenzo?" "I think you're reckless, Dmitry. You killed those children in Yemen. You framed me for Al-Hasaka. And you did it because you knew I was trying to push you out of the market. You wanted me to take the fall for your crimes." A laugh, cold and sharp. "And who would believe you? The son of Marcus Santos, arms dealer extraordinaire. You think anyone cares that you have a conscience now?" Venna peered through a gap in the doorway. Lorenzo stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by crates. Dmitry had 4 men with him, all armed. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution waiting to happen. "You're not walking out of here, Santos, but I'll make you a deal. Tell me where you've hidden the evidence, and I'll make it quick. Your sister won't have to identify a body that's been tortured." Lorenzo's expression didn't change. "You touch Sophia, and I'll haunt you from hell itself." Brave words for a dead man. Dmitri nodded to one of his men, who raised a gun. Venna didn't think. She shoved the door open and stumbled inside, all eyes turning to her. "Stop. Please, just stop." Lorenzo's face went white. "Venna, what the hell are you doing here?" "Ah, the girl from the club." Dmitri smiled, and it was a terrible thing. "How convenient. Now I don't have to hunt you down separately." "She's not part of this," Lorenzo said, his voice deadly quiet. "Let her go, Dmitri. This is between us. She came here to save you. That makes her very much a part of this." Dmitri gestured, and one of his men grabbed Venna, twisting her arm behind her back. She cried out, and Lorenzo took a step forward before 3 guns trained on him. "Don't," Dmitri warned. "You move, she dies first. Then you. Then I'll take my time with your sister." Lorenzo's eyes met Venna's, and she saw rage there, and terror, and something that looked like agony. "Venna, why did you come? I couldn't let you die." "How did you know about this meeting?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing. Venna's mind raced through lies and half-truths before settling on something close to honesty. "I saw the business card in your jacket at the restaurant. I didn't know what it meant, but tonight I got a call warning me you were in danger, so I came." "A call from who?" "From the FBI." Venna's voice broke. "They've been following you. They wanted me to spy on you, to gather evidence. They offered me money, and I was desperate because of my mother, and I said yes. But I couldn't do it, Lorenzo. When I saw what you were really doing, when I realized you were trying to stop people like him," she gestured at Dmitri. "I told them I was done, but then they called and said you were going to die tonight, and I couldn't just let that happen." The silence that followed was deafening. Lorenzo's face was a mask, unreadable. Dmitri was laughing. "Oh, this is perfect. The FBI sent a little girl to seduce you, and you fell for it. Marcus Santos would be so disappointed." "Shut up," Lorenzo said, but his eyes never left Venna's. "You've been spying on me this entire time." "No. I came back to Dubai 3 days ago to spy on you. But I stopped. The moment I saw your office, saw what you were collecting, I stopped. I swear to you, Lorenzo, I didn't give them anything." "But you came here too. You came back because they asked you to." His voice was flat, empty. "Everything you said, everything that was all part of your mission." "No. At first, yes. But then I fell in love with you, and I couldn't—" "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. "Don't say that word to me ever again." Dmitri was enjoying this too much, his smile wide. "This is better than killing you, Santos. Watching you realize the girl you risked everything for was just a federal plant. But I'm going to kill you anyway, so don't worry. Your suffering will end soon." "Let her go first," Lorenzo said. "She's useless to you. Let her walk out of here and I'll tell you where the evidence is." "Lorenzo, no. Quiet." He still wouldn't look at her. "You've done enough. Dmitri, do we have a deal?" Dmitri considered for a moment, then shrugged. "Why not? She's seen too much anyway. Kill her first, then him." Everything happened at once. Lorenzo moved faster than Venna thought possible, tackling the man closest to him and grabbing his gun. Dmitri's men opened fire. Venna's captor loosened his grip in the Wutchik's chaos, and she twisted free, running for cover behind a stack of crates. Gunfire echoed through the warehouse, deafening, punctuated by shouts and the sound of bodies hitting concrete. Then silence. Horrible, complete silence. Venna peered around the crate. 3 of Dmitri's men were down. Dimitri himself was bleeding from his shoulder, stumbling toward the door. And Lorenzo. Lorenzo was on the ground, red spreading across his white shirt, his gun fallen from his hand. No, 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 no. Venna ran to him, pressing her hands against the wound in his chest. Blood pulsed between her fingers, hot and too fast. Lorenzo, stay with me. Please, stay with me. His eyes found hers, and they were dimming already. You should have stayed in Madrid. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I know. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. I think I knew from the beginning that you'd be the one to destroy me. I just didn't care. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Someone must have called the police. Rashid, probably, when Venna didn't come back. Lorenzo's hand came up to touch her face, leaving a streak of red across her cheek. The safe, he whispered. Second passport. Take Sofia. Argentina. Get her out. You're going to be fine. You're going to take her yourself. Venna. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. Promise me. Save my sister. It's the only thing that matters now. I promise. But you have to hold on. The ambulance is coming. I can hear it. His eyes closed. His hand fell, and Venna was left kneeling in his blood, holding a man who might be dying because of her, because she'd been foolish enough to think she could play spy games without consequences. The police burst through the door, guns drawn, shouting in Arabic. Venna raised her hands, still covered in Lorenzo's blood, and tried to explain through tears what had happened. But the words wouldn't come. All she could do was watch as the paramedics surrounded Lorenzo, checking vitals, loading him onto a stretcher with efficient urgency. Is he alive? She asked one of them in broken Arabic. The paramedic glanced at her, then at Lorenzo's still form. Barely. They took him away, sirens screaming back into the night. The police took Venna to a station, questioned her for hours about what happened, about her relationship to Lorenzo Santos, about why she was at the warehouse. She told them everything except the FBI's involvement. That part she kept to herself. Some instinct told her that Chen and Rivera had known exactly what would happen tonight, that they'd sent her to that warehouse, not to save Lorenzo, but to complicate the situation even further. At dawn, Agent Chen appeared at the police station with documentation and diplomatic credentials and the kind of authority that made local cops nervous. She got Venna released into her custody, led her to a waiting car, and didn't speak until they were moving. That was incredibly stupid. Venna's laugh was bitter. Which part? Agreeing to spy for you, falling for the target, running into a firefight to save him? All of it, but especially the running into a firefight part. Chen glanced at her. He's alive, by the way. Critical condition, but alive. They're operating now. Relief hit Venna so hard she nearly sobbed. Thank God. Don't thank God yet. When he wakes up, he'll be arrested. We have enough evidence now to charge him with weapons trafficking, conspiracy, a dozen other counts. But he was trying to stop Dimitri. He was collecting evidence. Against his competitors, yes. That doesn't erase his own crimes, Ms. Martinez. Lorenzo Santos has been dealing with weapons for 7 years. He's responsible for deaths, even if he's also tried to prevent others. The world isn't black and white. Then why did you use me? Why lie about what he'd done? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Because we needed someone on the inside, and you were vulnerable. Your mother's illness, your financial situation, your connection to Santos. We exploited that. And I'm not sorry, because at the end of the day, we'll put a major arms dealer behind bars. even though half of what you told me was a lie. We told you what you needed to believe to do your job. The car stopped outside Venna's hotel. You should go back to Madrid, Miss Martinez. There's nothing left for you here. What about the money you promised? You didn't fulfill your end of the bargain. You refused to gather evidence when we asked. You warned Santos about the meeting, which nearly got both of you killed. Why would we pay you? Because my mother is dying. Because I did everything you asked until I realized you were manipulating me. Because I destroyed the man I love for nothing. But Venna just nodded and got out of the car. Chen drove away without another word, leaving her standing on a Dubai street as the sun rose over a city that had never felt more foreign. She went to her hotel room and called Lucia. I need you to do something for me. Don't ask questions, just listen. Venna, you're scaring me. There's a girl named Sofia Santos. She's studying medicine in London. I need you to find her. Tell her that her brother is in the hospital, that she needs to be careful, that someone might come after her. Tell her. Venna's voice broke. Tell her, I'm sorry. What the hell is going on? I made a terrible mistake, and now I need to fix it. Please, Lucia, this is important. Okay, I'll find her, but you need to come home. Whatever you're involved in, you need to get out. I will, soon. I promise. She hung up and sat on the edge of her bed, trying to figure out what to do next. Lorenzo was in surgery, might not survive, would definitely be arrested if he did. Sofia was in danger. Dmitri was still out there, wounded but alive. And Venna was caught in the middle of it all, powerless and alone. Her regular phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Martinez, this is Rashid, Mr. Santos's driver. Rashid, is Lorenzo still in surgery? But before they took him in, he regained consciousness for a moment. He asked me to give you a message. Venna's heart clenched. What message? He said, tell her to run. Tell her they're coming for her too. Tell her I forgive her, and she needs to forget me. Rashid's voice was tight. Then he told me where to find his sister's emergency contacts. I'm on my way to London now, but you should listen to him, miss. You should run. Who's coming for me? Everyone. The FBI will want you for testimony. Dimitri's people will want revenge for tonight. Santos Industries' competitors will see you as leverage. You're in more danger than you realize. Where do I go? Anywhere but here. And don't trust the authorities. Don't trust anyone. He paused. For what it's worth, I think Mr. Santos really did care about you. I've worked for him for 6 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Even though I betrayed him. Especially because you came back. Especially because you risked your life to save his, even after what he'd become. Rashid's voice softened. That meant something to him, more than you know. After he hung up, Venna sat in the hotel room and tried to make sense of the last 72 hours. She'd come to Dubai to spy on a man she barely knew. She'd fallen in love with him instead. She'd discovered he wasn't the monster she'd been told he was. She'd run into danger to save him and gotten him shot instead. And now, everyone, the FBI, his enemies, probably his own organization, saw her as a threat. She packed quickly, using cash to buy a plane ticket to Madrid under her own name. If she was running, she might as well run home. At the airport, security pulled her aside for questioning. A man in a suit, American, with the kind of bland face that disappeared in crowds. Ms. Martinez, I'm Agent Taylor, FBI. Agent Chen asked me to have a word with you before you leave. I have nothing to say to you people. Understandable. But you should know that Lorenzo Santos woke up an hour ago. He's refusing to cooperate, refusing to name his associates, refusing to discuss his business. Which means we need your testimony. Everything you saw in his apartment, his office, the warehouse, you're our star witness. I didn't see anything. Really? Because we have surveillance photos that suggest otherwise. You entering his building multiple times, you in his office, you with devices we provided you. He leaned closer. You help us, we can protect you. You refuse, and we charge you as an accessory. Your choice. Venna looked at this stranger threatening her future and made a decision. I want immunity. Complete immunity for anything related to Lorenzo Santos or this investigation. And I want it in writing, signed by a federal prosecutor before I say one more word. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. You want my testimony? Get me immunity. Otherwise, I'll claim the FBI coerced me, that I was acting under duress, that everything I did was because you threatened me. How do you think that will play in court? Agent Taylor's bland face tightened. I'll make a call. 2 hours later, Venna had her immunity agreement and was sitting in a room with Chen, Rivera and Taylor, telling them everything she'd seen in Lorenzo's office. The maps, the photos of destruction, the evidence he'd been collecting against Dimitri, the plan to escape to Argentina with Sofia. Where's this evidence now? Chen asked. In his safe. I can give you the combination. They wrote it down, exchanged glances. This changes things. If Santos was building a case against Volkov, that makes him potentially useful. We might be able to offer him a deal. What kind of deal? Reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. Maybe witness protection after. It depends on how much he cooperates. Chen looked at Venna with something almost like respect. You might have just saved his life. Again. But Venna didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd stumbled through a nightmare and accidentally done one thing right among a dozen things wrong. Can I see him? Before I leave? Absolutely not. You're a witness now. No contact with the defendant. He's not a defendant. He's a person. He's a criminal who happens to be a person. There's a difference. Chen stood. You're free to go, Ms. Martinez. We'll be in touch if we need additional testimony. Until then, I'd suggest you keep a low profile. Dmitry Volkov is still out there, and he has a long memory. Venna flew home to Madrid in a daze, her mind stuck in that warehouse, watching Lorenzo fall, feeling his blood between her fingers. She'd saved him and destroyed him in the same breath. She'd betrayed him and fought for him. She didn't know which version of herself was real anymore. Comment below if you think Venna made the right choice. The story gets even more complicated from here. Madrid felt like a foreign country. Venna moved through her apartment like a ghost, unpacking her suitcase with mechanical efficiency. Lucia came over immediately, demanding answers, but Venna couldn't give them. How did you explain falling in love with a man whose world was built on violence? How did you explain betraying him, then trying to save him, then testifying against him? You look like you've aged 10 years, Lucia said, sitting on Venna's bed while Venna stared blankly at her closet. What happened in Dubai? I made a mistake, a huge, terrible mistake that I can't fix. The man from the phone call, Lorenzo, this is about him. He's in the hospital. He might go to prison, and it's my fault. Venna turned to face her friend. I was supposed to spy on him for the FBI. I fell in love with him instead. Then I got him shot trying to save him. I'm a disaster, Lucia. I destroy everything I touch. Lucia pulled her into a hug, and Venna finally broke down completely. She cried for Lorenzo, for the future they'd never have, for her mother who still needed treatments Venna couldn't afford, for herself and all the choices she couldn't take back. 3 months passed in a blur. Venna returned to her architecture classes, worked her cafe shifts, visited her mother in the hospital. Rosa was declining, the cancer winning despite the cheaper treatments they could afford. Every day, Venna watched her mother grow a little smaller, a little more transparent, and felt the weight of her choices crushing her. She followed Lorenzo's trial in the news. Arms dealer Lorenzo Santos faces federal charges. Santos Industries crumbles as CEO arrested. Witness testimony reveals years of illegal weapons trafficking. Her testimony had been damning, not because she'd wanted it to be, but because the truth was complicated. Yes, Lorenzo had been collecting evidence against Dimitri. But yes, he'd also been running his father's business for 7 years. The prosecutors didn't care that he'd been trapped. They cared that he'd profited from violence. The sentencing came on a cold October day, 25 years in federal prison. Venna watched the news coverage from her apartment, saw Lorenzo being led away in handcuffs, his face blank. He looked thinner, older, beaten. She wondered if he thought about her, if he hated her, if he'd already forgotten. Sophia had disappeared after the trial. Lucia reported that she'd spoken to her once, warned her about the danger, but then Sophia had vanished, probably in Argentina, using one of those false passports. At least she was safe. At least Venna had kept that promise. 6 months after Lorenzo's sentencing, Venna's mother died, peacefully in her sleep, with Venna holding her hand. The funeral was small, just Lucia and a handful of Rosa's friends from church. Venna stood at the grave and felt nothing. She'd cried herself empty months ago. After the funeral, she made a decision. She couldn't keep living like this, haunted by guilt, going through the motions. She needed to know the whole truth about Lorenzo, about what he'd really done, what he'd really been trying to prevent. If she was going to carry this guilt for the rest of her life, she at least deserved to know if it was justified. She started investigating, quietly, carefully, using skills she'd learned in her architecture research to trace documents and contracts. She found Lorenzo's lawyer, a sharp woman named Selina, who tried to defend him and failed. Selina was reluctant at first, but when Venna explained who she was, something shifted. You're the girl from Madrid, the one he wouldn't stop talking about during trial prep. He talked about me? Constantly. How you'd betrayed him, how he'd been a fool to trust you, how he understood why you'd done it. Selina studied Venna, but also how you'd tried to save him, how you'd risked your life running into that warehouse. He was angry, but he wasn't surprised. He said you had too much conscience for the world he lived in. Venna's eyes burned. I need to know what really happened. The weapons deals, the deaths Chen showed me, all of it. Was he responsible or not? That's complicated. I need complicated. I need the truth. So Selina showed her. Documents Lorenzo had been preparing before his arrest. Proof that his father had made deals with Dmitry Volkov years ago, deals Lorenzo had discovered only after Marcus Santos's stroke. Proof that Lorenzo had been systematically cutting ties with the worst actors in the market. proof that the weapons used in Yemen and Syria had come from Volkov's stockpiles, not Lorenzo's. He was trying to build a case to bring to international authorities, Selina explained. He knew he couldn't just walk away without getting everyone killed, so he was gathering evidence, planning to turn himself in with immunity in exchange for testimony that would take down the entire network. Dmitri, his father's old partners, everyone. Then why didn't he? Because you showed up. Because the FBI moved faster than he expected. Because everything fell apart before he was ready. Selina closed the folder. The irony is that if you hadn't been sent to spy on him, if you'd never gone to Dubai, Lorenzo probably would have succeeded. He'd have brought down Dmitri and gotten out clean. The words hit like bullets. Everything Venna had done, agreeing to spy, falling in love, trying to save him, had destroyed the very thing Lorenzo had been working toward for years. I need to talk to him. He won't see you. He's refused all visitors except Sophia, and she hasn't come either. Please, there has to be a way. Selina was quiet for a long moment. There might be, but you're not going to like it. What Selina proposed was insane. A new investigation into Dmitry Volkov, using Lorenzo's evidence. If they could prove that Chen and Rivera had known about Dmitri's plan to kill Lorenzo that night, had sent Venna to the warehouse not to save him, but to complicate things, it might be enough to get Lorenzo's sentence reduced or even overturned. You'd have to testify against the FBI, Selina warned. You'd have to admit they manipulated you, that their evidence was tainted. It could take years, and it might not work. I don't care. Tell me what to do. So Venna spent the next year building a case. She worked with Selina, tracked down Dmitri's associates who'd been arrested, found discrepancies in the FBI's reports. She discovered that Chen had lost her partner not to Lorenzo's weapons, but to Dmitri's, that she'd been pursuing the wrong man for years out of grief and rage. She found proof that Rivera had personal debts to people in Dmitri's network, that he'd been compromised from the start. It was Lucia who found the smoking gun, surveillance footage from outside the warehouse that showed Chen meeting with Dmitri 2 weeks before the shooting. A payment exchanged. Adult, deal struck. Chen had helped Dmitri set up Lorenzo, had used Venna to make sure Lorenzo would be exactly where Dmitri wanted him. She wanted him dead, Venna breathed, staring at the footage. She sent me there, knowing it was a trap. She wanted Dmitri to do what she couldn't do legally, Amara corrected. But yes, this is enough. We can reopen the case. The second trial took 8 months. Chen and Rivera were arrested for conspiracy, corruption, obstruction of justice. Their testimonies unraveled. The evidence against Lorenzo was reassessed. And on a spring day 18 months after his conviction, Lorenzo Santos was to be released out of federal prison, a free man. Venna watched from across the street, hidden in a crowd of reporters and onlookers, waiting to see the man she loved. But he never came. Ambulance came rushing into the prison yard. "What's going on?" Venna asked as panic surged within her. The prison was closed. No one gets in or out. "Hey, what's happening? Where is Lorenzo? Let me in!" Venna screeched. Later that night, it was announced on live broadcast. Lorenzo Santos, the convicted arm dealer who was proven innocent today, is repeatedly stabbed to death in prison by an inmate on the way of his release. Venna sat on the couch not knowing to cry or how to react. She was blank. Venna succeeded in clearing his name. The documents, the testimonies, the truth, all of it came too late. Lorenzo Santos was killed in prison by Dimitri's associates on the day of his scheduled release. The courts had exonerated him. The world knew he was innocent, but he was already gone. 2 weeks later, Venna stood at his grave in Seville, the Spanish sun warm on her shoulders. She placed the flowers carefully, the same wild flowers that grew near his mother's village, the ones he'd told her about that night in the kitchen when he made tortilla, and she'd fallen just a little bit in love. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the stone. "I found the truth. I know what you were trying to do. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you." The wind carried her words away. She touched the cold marble one last time, then turned to leave. Her hand was on the cemetery gate when she felt it, that familiar pull, the sensation of being watched, the same feeling she'd had in Dubai when he'd looked at her across the penthouse. Her breath caught. Across the narrow road, half hidden in the shade of an olive tree, stood a man in a black coat. Thin, a scar on his jaw that hadn't been there before. But those eyes, dark, unreadable, infinite, those eyes she would know anywhere. Lorenzo. Her heart stopped. The flowers fell from her hand. Lorenzo! The name ripped from her throat. She stepped off the curb, reaching for him, and he raised one hand. Whether in warning or greeting, she would never know, because a delivery lorry roared between them, blocking her view for 3 endless seconds. And when it passed, she looked at the direction, but nothing. He was gone. Venna stood frozen in the middle of the empty street, her hands shaking, her breath coming in gasps. She spun in a circle, searching, but there was nothing. No one. Could she be seeing ghosts now? The Spanish wind and the distant bells of the cathedral altered the silence around her. She came back to the spot he stood before, wondering if she saw seeing things. But on reaching his standing spot, she saw something that had fallen into the snow on the floor. A watch, a familiar old wristwatch. She saw him wore in Dubai all the time, claimed it was his mother's. She gasped and covered her mouth. Her eyes darted around, and she looked back at the grave, then at the empty road, then at her trembling hands that held his favorite wristwatch. "Lorenzo!" she called out loud, and her voice echoed in the wind. Somewhere in this city, in this world, Lorenzo Santos was either alive or haunting her, and she would spend the rest of her life trying to find out which. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with Venna and Lorenzo's story. Their journey was messy and complicated, and sometimes painful, but that's what makes it real. Love isn't always clean. Sometimes it's broken and rebuilt and broken again before it becomes something that lasts. Please subscribe to this channel for more stories like this one. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts. Did Venna make the right choices? Did Lorenzo deserve forgiveness? What would you have done in their situation? Hit that like button if this story moved you, and share it with someone who loves complicated romance with real consequences. These characters lived in my imagination for months, and I hope they'll live in yours too. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love, even when it's terrifying, even when it costs everything, even when you don't know if it will survive.